Amelia Ravenscroft had always believed that the old Ravenscroft estate carried its own silence, a heavy kind that settled in the corners of every room. On the morning she returned to York for her father's birthday, the house greeted her with that same stillness, as if quietly warning her of the storm hidden behind its stone walls. She stepped through the doorway, removing her gloves as the smell of old books and polished oak wrapped around her. It was the scent of her childhood. Yet today, it felt colder, unfamiliar, almost judgmental. The portraits of their ancestors stared down with sharp, proud eyes, as if reminding her that she no longer quite belonged. Amelia had not seen her father, Sir Benedict Ravenscroft, in weeks. His health had been failing, and the doctors had gently insisted that he needed rest, calm, and no unnecessary tension. But tension was precisely what Oliver brought wherever he went, and Oliver lived here. Oliver Ravenscroft, her younger brother by 3 years, had a smile that fooled everyone except her. To the outside world, he was charming, articulate, and dutiful. To Amelia, he was something else entirely, something far darker. Since their mother died, he had somehow woven himself into every decision their father made, every document signed, every guest invited, every whisper that traveled down these halls. Amelia entered the drawing room and found Oliver already there, leaning back on the velvet sofa with a glass of whiskey balanced carelessly in one hand. His eyes slid towards her, and that familiar smirk formed, sharp as a blade. "Back home, little dove," he said, his tone dripping with false warmth. "You look surprised. Did you expect father to greet you himself?" "I expected a simple welcome," she replied softly, refusing to rise to his provocation. "Is he resting?" "If you can call it that." "He has been quite distressed." Oliver paused, raising an eyebrow. "He said your last visit was rather upsetting." Her heart tightened. She had done nothing to upset him. Unless Oliver had planted something in his mind again. That thought alone made her fists clench. Before she could respond, the door opened and their father entered, supported by a cane. His once commanding presence had dimmed, but the authority in his pale eyes remained. "Amelia," he said, his voice low and tired. "We need to talk." She drew closer, searching his face for warmth, for any sign that her presence mattered. But all she found was doubt. Doubt she knew did not originate from him. "What is it, father?" He glanced at Oliver before speaking, a gesture that twisted Amelia's stomach. "There have been troubling matters raised about your behavior and your intentions for the estate. Oliver tells me you have been inquiring about finances, assets, and legal rights. He says you have plans to take control." Amelia blinked, stunned. It was a lie. An unforgivable one. "That is not true," she whispered. "I would never do anything without speaking to you." Her father's expression wavered, but only for a moment. "I cannot have discord in this house. Not now. If what Oliver says is correct, then I must protect what remains of our legacy." Oliver placed his hand on their father's shoulder, playing the role of loyal son. "Father, she has always wanted more than her place here." Her chest tightened as if someone had tied ropes around her ribs. Every word stabbed deeper, each lie sinking into her father's mind where truth used to live. Amelia felt the house watching her, the portraits leaning in as if absorbing every detail of her humiliation. Sir Benedict exhaled heavily. "For now, I need space. Amelia. I think it is best if you leave." The words hit her like a fall into icy water. She opened her mouth, tried to speak, but no sound came out. Oliver hid a victorious smile behind his glass. Dismissed. Cast out of the house she loved. On her father's birthday. And in that painful silence, she realized something. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a trap carefully laid. A trap she had walked straight into. Before she stepped out of the room, a faint sound echoed down the corridor. A whisper. A footstep. Something that should not have been there. Amelia turned sharply. Someone else was listening. Someone who should not have been. And that, she knew, was the beginning of a much darker truth. Amelia paused at the threshold of the drawing room, her hand hovering just above the polished brass handle. The faint sound she had heard in the corridor lingered in her mind like a cold breath on the back of her neck. For a moment, she wondered if she had imagined it, a desperate trick of her shaken nerves. But then it came again. A shuffle. A low exhale. Someone was there. The corridor of Ravenscroft House stretched out before her, long and shadowed, lined with portraits and antique cabinets. At the far end, the heavy curtains shifted as if brushed by a passing draught, though no window had been opened. Amelia stepped forward slowly, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. "Who is there?" Her voice trembled despite her effort to steady it. The silence that followed felt deliberate, as though someone were holding their breath, waiting for her to move on. Then a soft creak came from behind a partially opened door midway down the hall. It led to her mother's old study, a room untouched since her passing. No one dared enter it. Not even Sir Benedict. Certainly not Oliver, who had always hated the space. Amelia approached the door with cautious steps. She placed her hand on it and pushed gently. The familiar scent of lavender and paper greeted her, mingling with dust that glittered faintly in the morning light. But the room appeared empty. She stepped inside, her eyes scanning the shelves, the writing desk, the armchair where her mother used to read in the evenings. Everything sat exactly as she remembered it, frozen in time. Yet the feeling remained. Someone had been here. Then she noticed it. A slight movement near the desk. A slim figure emerging from behind the tall bookcase. Amelia gasped. A young woman, no more than 19, stood before her. Her cheeks flushed with panic, her eyes wide as though she had been caught stealing from the dead. She wore a simple linen dress and an apron dusted with flour. A kitchen maid. "What are you doing here?" Amelia whispered. The girl pressed a finger to her lips, urging silence. Her hands trembled as she clutched a folded piece of paper. "Please, miss, do not let Mr. Oliver know I was here," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "He would dismiss me. Or worse." Amelia's stomach twisted. Worse. What did that mean? What had Oliver done to make a young servant fear him so deeply? "Who are you?" "My name is Clara. Clara Whitlow. I work in the kitchens." The name felt unfamiliar. Oliver must have hired her recently, and likely without their father's knowledge. Sir Benedict trusted only long-term staff, people loyal to the family. Hiring someone new was unusual. Unless Oliver had his own reasons. Clara hesitated before extending the folded paper. Her eyes darted toward the door as if expecting Oliver to appear at any moment. "I did not mean to listen in, miss. Truly, I did not. I was delivering tea for your father when I heard them speaking. Mr. Oliver and Mr. Hammond." Amelia stiffened at the mention of Mr. Hammond. He was Oliver's business associate, a man with a slick smile and eyes that never seemed to rest. She had always felt something unnerving about him. "What did you hear, Clara?" The maid swallowed, her fingers tightening around the paper before Amelia gently took it from her. "They said you would not be a problem for much longer. That once your father signed the last document, they would have control over everything. Mr. Hammond said, he said you would be out of the picture for good." The room seemed to spin. Out of the picture. The words felt like poison on her skin. Amelia unfolded the paper. It was a copy of a financial statement, stamped with the Ravenscroft crest but filled with numbers she had never seen, transactions she did not recognize, and signatures she knew were forged. Her father's handwriting was shaky these days, but this was not his writing at all. Clara's voice shook as she continued, tears pooling in her eyes. "I know I should not have taken it, miss. But I heard them talking about you. About ruining your name. And I thought you should know. Amelia felt a rush of gratitude, fear, and fury all at once. Clara had risked her job, perhaps her safety, to bring this to her. Oliver's lies were not just manipulation. They were part of something deeper. Something planned. Something dangerous. Clara stepped back, her breath quickening. Please, miss. If Mr. Oliver finds out I am helping you. Amelia reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. You did the right thing. I will not let anything happen to you. I promise. The girl nodded, wiping her tears before slipping out through a side door, disappearing as quickly as she had come. Leaving Amelia alone in the cold, silent study of her late mother. Amelia stared down at the paper. The evidence. The betrayal. The threat. And then she heard it. Footsteps approaching the study. Heavy. Determined. Familiar. Oliver. He was coming straight towards her. And Amelia knew that if he found her holding this document, everything would change in an instant. But not in the way he expected. For the first time, she had something he did not. The truth. And now she had to decide what to do with it before the door swung open. The footsteps grew louder, echoing along the corridor with a steady rhythm that sent a chill down Amelia's spine. She folded the incriminating paper quickly and slipped it into the inner pocket of her coat just as the study door handle began to turn. Every part of her braced, preparing to face Oliver in the one room he never dared enter. Perhaps that alone would unsettle him. The door opened. Oliver stepped inside with that same careless confidence he wore like a tailored suit. Yet the moment his eyes swept across the room, something flickered behind his polite facade. Discomfort. Irritation. A shadow of fear, quickly smothered beneath his smirk. What are you doing in here, sister? His voice held a mockery he did little to hide. A little sentimental walk through memory lane. Amelia forced calm into her posture, keeping her hands still, away from her coat. I came to clear my thoughts. In Mother's study he raised an eyebrow. Since when did you care so much about this room? It has been untouched for years. Precisely why it is the one place free of your influence, she replied softly. Oliver's jaw tightened. She had struck a nerve. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them thickened, filled with unspoken history and the tension of two wills silently preparing for battle. Oliver moved further into the room, trailing his fingers along the edge of their mother's desk. A gesture far too intimate for a son who had despised the woman who once sat there. You know, Amelia, he began, his tone shifting into something quieter, colder, Father was upset long before you arrived today. He thinks your intentions here are rather questionable. And how convenient that you are the one informing him of my intentions. Oliver paused, turning to face her fully. His smile no longer reached his eyes. Someone has to protect him. From whom? From me or from the truth? The question hung in the air like smoke. Oliver said nothing, but his stillness revealed everything. Then his gaze shifted slightly, searching the room, the shelves, the corners. Amelia felt her pulse quicken. Was he looking for Clara? Had he seen her slip away? Oliver stepped closer, lowering his voice. Someone has been snooping around. A little mouse creeping through rooms she should not enter. If I catch her, I will make sure she regrets it. His meaning was unmistakable. Amelia's throat tightened, but she kept her expression composed. The idea of Clara suffering for her bravery carved a hollow ache in her chest. Oliver leaned closer. If you are hiding something, Amelia, now would be a very good time to hand it over. She met his stare with steady determination. I have nothing to hide. For a moment, they stood inches apart, the air between them charged with hostility. Then Oliver's smile returned, thin and predatory. Very well. But I will find out what you are doing. And when I do, Even father will not be able to save you. He turned sharply and left the study, the door swinging shut behind him with a final thud that echoed through the quiet room. Amelia released a trembling breath. Her hands shook as she removed the folded paper from her coat and stared at it again. Clara's fear. Oliver's threat. The forged signatures. The whispered plan to remove her from the picture entirely. This was no longer just manipulation. It was a trap designed to erase her. She stepped out into the corridor, her eyes scanning both directions. She needed time. Space. A plan. And she needed to protect Clara before Oliver discovered what she had done. As she hurried down the staircase, the house around her seemed to shift, its shadows stretching longer, thicker. Servants moved quietly, avoiding eye contact as if they sensed something dark simmering beneath the surface of the Ravenscroft legacy. When Amelia reached the lower hall, she saw the butler, Mr. Dawkins, standing stiffly near the front door. His usually steady face looked troubled, his brow furrowed as he glanced between Amelia and the staircase above. Mr. Dawkins, she whispered urgently. I need to speak with you. Before the butler could respond, a distant voice cut through the hall. Amelia. Her father. Sir Benedict stood at the top of the stairs, leaning heavily on his cane, his face pale as parchment. But there was something new in his eyes. Not anger. Not sadness. Confusion. Fear. I need a word with you, he said. Right now. The butler stepped aside. The hall fell silent. And as Amelia lifted her head to meet her father's gaze, she understood something with chilling certainty. Whatever Oliver had planned, he had already begun. Sir Benedict descended the staircase with slow, deliberate steps, each one echoing through the hall like the ticking of a clock counting down to something inevitable. Amelia waited at the foot of the stairs, her breath held tight in her chest. She longed to rush forward and steady him, but she knew he would not welcome the gesture. Not while Oliver's voice still lingered in his ear. When he reached the last step, he looked at her with a mixture of weariness and sorrow. His hands trembled slightly on the handle of his cane. Come with me, he murmured. He led her into the smaller parlor, a room barely used except during storms when the larger rooms felt too hollow. Today, the space felt even smaller, the air thick with the weight of unspoken truths. Sir Benedict closed the door behind them. Amelia stood in the center of the room, waiting for him to speak. Her heart thudded painfully, not out of guilt, but fear of how deeply Oliver's lies had sunk into her father's fragile mind. At last, Sir Benedict turned to her. I want to believe you, he said quietly. You are my daughter. My firstborn. The one your mother trusted most. Amelia's throat tightened. Then why do I feel as though you no longer do? Her father's eyes wavered, the conflict inside him surfacing visibly. Because things have been brought to my attention. Concerning matters. Concerning me, she whispered. He nodded. Oliver says you have been prying into the estate affairs. That you have been making inquiries behind my back. That is not true. Father, I came here today with no intention other than to celebrate your birthday. Sir Benedict sank into the armchair by the window, exhaling heavily. I have always wanted peace between the two of you, he said. But lately it feels as though I am losing control of everything in this house. Amelia approached him slowly, kneeling beside the chair so she could look directly into his tired eyes. Father, something is happening here. Something Oliver does not want you to see. I need you to trust me. Before she could continue, Sir Benedict held up a shaking hand. This is precisely what I feared, he murmured. Accusations. Division. Your mother would be heartbroken. Amelia felt the words strike deep. This was Oliver's trap at its cruelest. Not just turning her father against her, but making any defense she offered seem like manipulation. Sir Benedict looked down at his trembling hands. I saw a document earlier today. Something Mr. Hammond brought for me to sign. He said it was to protect the estate. To keep it within the family. Amelia's pulse stopped. Did you sign it? Not yet. But I am considering it. Her breath caught. Father, please. Do not sign anything without reading it carefully. Mr. Hammond is not acting in your best interest. Sir Benedict looked up, confusion clouding his expression. How do you know that if you have not seen the document, how can you be so certain? Because She stopped herself. She could not reveal Clara. Not yet. Not until she was certain the girl was safe. Because I know Oliver has been meeting with Mr. Hammond in secret. Her father stiffened. The truth unsettled him. Amelia pressed on, her voice gentle. They are not trying to protect this estate. They are trying to take control of it. And once they do, they will push you aside, Father. They will push us both aside. Sir Benedict's breath faltered. She could see the doubt forming, cracks in the story Oliver had fed him. Amelia, what are you saying? I am saying that someone is forging your signature. His head jerked up, shock flaring in his eyes. Forging my... The parlor door slammed open. Oliver strode in without knocking, his expression thunderous. Amelia, Father asked for privacy, he said, his voice icy. You should not be interfering with his decisions. Sir Benedict looked torn, his eyes darting between his children. Amelia rose to her feet slowly. I was not interfering. I was explaining. Oliver moved closer, positioning himself between Amelia and their father like a barrier. His voice dropped into a dangerously controlled tone. Explaining what lies have you been spreading? Amelia met his gaze without flinching. The truth. Oliver's smile sharpened. And what truth would that be? That you and Mr. Hammond are manipulating Father. That you are preparing documents he does not fully understand. That you intend to control the estate once he... Enough. Sir Benedict's voice cracked through the room like a whip. Both siblings fell silent. Oliver turned to him quickly, adopting a wounded expression. Father, I assure you, I only want what is best for you. Sir Benedict held up both hands, shaking. I cannot bear this. Not today. Not like this. He rose from his chair, swaying slightly. Father, please, Amelia reached forward. Oliver stepped in front of her, blocking her path. His eyes glinted with silent triumph. Sir Benedict steadied himself on the table, breathing heavily. I need time to think, he whispered. Alone. He left the parlor, his steps slow and unsteady. Once he was out of sight, Oliver turned to Amelia, his facade dropping entirely. His voice was a low, venomous whisper. You are making a dangerous mistake. Amelia held his gaze, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. So are you. Oliver's lips curled into a thin, cruel line. Then let us see which one of us Father believes in the end. He left the room, leaving Amelia in a silence that felt heavier than stone. But the moment the door closed, she reached into her coat and touched the folded paper. She no longer needed her father's belief. She needed the truth to surface. And she would stop at nothing to bring it into the light. The rain had not ceased since the moment Eleanor left the inn. It fell in thick, slanting sheets, turning the cobbled streets of Brackenford into a glistening river of grey. Her cloak clung to her skin, heavy with water, yet she pressed on, driven by a sense of urgency she could neither understand nor ignore. She reached the old rectory at the edge of the village. Its windows were dark, save for a thin strip of golden light beneath the door. She hesitated only a moment before lifting her hand and knocking. The door opened a crack. Reverend Alistair Morfan's deep-set eyes appeared first, followed by the rest of his tall, angular frame. Miss Harrow, he said quietly. I wondered when you would come. You know why I'm here, Reverend, Eleanor replied, stepping inside. It's about the child in the portrait. And the manor. And whatever haunts the moor. The Reverend shut the door firmly, turning the key with a decisive click. Then he gestured to the hearth, where a single candle burned despite the unused fireplace. Some truths, he began, are safer spoken when the fire is cold. Eleanor sat, her fingers trembling slightly. The Reverend took a seat opposite her, folding his hands. The child you saw, he continued, is not a ghost in the common sense. He is a remnant, an imprint on this land. A life cut short with such violence it tore something in the very air. And that tear has never healed. Eleanor swallowed hard. What does this have to do with me? More than you realize. The Reverend leaned forward. Your mother was the last person to investigate the disappearance at Brackenford Manor. She believed, foolishly perhaps, that the child's spirit sought someone from his own bloodline. Eleanor's breath caught. You're saying, my mother knew the child. She knew of him. And she suspected a connection. His voice lowered. But she vanished before she could finish her work. The candle flickered violently, although no wind moved through the room. Eleanor's pulse quickened. What are you trying to tell me? Reverend Morphin stood slowly and moved towards a locked cabinet. He retrieved an old, leather-bound journal and handed it to her. This was your mother's. She left it with me the night before she disappeared. He paused. And she begged me to give it to you, but only when the child returned. Eleanor stared at the book, dread coiling in her stomach. Returned, she whispered. He appeared to me tonight. In the fog. The Reverend closed his eyes as if he had been waiting years to hear those words. Then it has begun, he said. And God forgive us, it may already be too late. Before Eleanor could speak, the candle flame stretched upward, tall, unnatural, then extinguished itself, plunging the room into darkness. From somewhere outside the rectory, across the drowned village, came the sound of a child laughing. A single, hollow laugh that did not belong to the living. The room was plunged into utter darkness, thick and breathless. Eleanor froze. Even the rain seemed to hush for a moment, as if the entire village listened to the distant, disembodied laughter. Reverend Morphin struck a match. Its brief flare illuminated his pale, strained expression before he lit another candle. We must move quickly, he murmured. Whatever stirs tonight is no mere echo. It is seeking. Seeking what? Eleanor whispered, clutching the journal to her chest. Not what, he corrected grimly. Who? He motioned her to sit once more. Eleanor opened the journal with hands that trembled despite her resolve. The first page bore her mother's handwriting, strong strokes, urgent lines. If you are reading this, Eleanor, then the Harrow curse has awakened again. Her lungs tightened. She turned the page. A child was lost at Brackenford Manor, long before your birth. They erased him from records, from memory, from lineage. But the land remembers. And so does he. Why was he erased? Eleanor asked, her voice thin. Reverend Morphin's jaw tightened. Because he was legitimate, yet inconvenient. His existence threatened the inheritance of the family who owned the manor. They hid him away, kept him out of sight. Until the night he died. Eleanor's heartbeat thundered in her ears. How did he die? She asked. The Reverend looked away. That is the question your mother feared most. Eleanor turned to another entry. The boy appears only to those who can reveal the truth. He showed himself to me once. And now I fear he will show himself to my daughter. Her breath faltered. She remembered the small figure in the fog, the pale face, the old-fashioned coat, the way he pointed silently toward the moor. He wants something from me, she murmured. Reverend Morphin shook his head. Not something. The truth. The one truth that could unravel everything done to him. Eleanor closed the journal. Then tell me who he is. Morphin hesitated. A crack of thunder shook the windows. His name, the Reverend said quietly, was Thomas Harrow. Eleanor's spine went cold. Harrow. But that's my family name. Yes. He was your ancestor. And you are the first Harrow since your great-grandmother to return to this village. Eleanor felt the room tilt slightly, as if the floor shifted under her. But before she could speak, the door rattled, just once, sharply, followed by a whispering sound like small fingers trailing across the wood. Reverend Morphin inhaled sharply. He is here, he said. The candle flame bent sideways, though no breeze moved. The whispering at the door grew louder, circling the frame like a child running a hand along it. Then, a faint voice, plaintive and impossibly close. Let me in. Eleanor. Eleanor's blood ran cold. How did he know her name? The journal slipped from her fingers just as the candle extinguished again, this time not from wind, but from something colder. Something standing on the other side of the door. The cold seeped through the floorboards, crawling into Eleanor's bones as she stared at the darkened doorway. The whispered plea had not come from human lips, yet it carried a clarity she could not ignore. Show yourself, she whispered, her voice trembling but firm. I am not afraid. A pause followed, heavy and unnatural. Then, from the mist beyond the window, a small silhouette appeared, barely visible through the fog. A boy, no older than 8, with pale hair and hollow eyes, stood on the edge of the moor. He raised a hand, pointing toward the distance where the manor loomed, dark and silent. Eleanor felt an irresistible pull. She grabbed her coat and journal, and without thinking, ran out into the rain-soaked streets. The village was deserted, the only sound the splash of her boots in puddles and the mournful wind through narrow alleys. Every step seemed to echo in rhythm with her heartbeat, each pulse urging her closer to the boy, and to the truth he carried. The moor stretched endlessly before her, thick fog curling around gnarled trees and broken hedgerows. Eleanor's lantern cast a weak circle of light, barely penetrating the grey haze. The boy waited patiently, motionless, as though he had always known she would come. Thomas, she said aloud, barely able to utter the name. I am here. The boy tilted his head, studying her, his expression neither angry nor welcoming, just expectant. Eleanor stepped closer, her heart pounding in both fear and hope. Then she saw it. Near the edge of the moor, partially hidden by the fog, a small stone slab, half buried in the earth. Something about it sent a shiver down her spine. She reached the stone and brushed away the mud and moss. Letters, faint but readable, carved deep into the rock. Here lies Thomas Harrow, lost but not forgotten. The boy's eyes glimmered with a strange, sorrowful light. He pointed again, this time toward the abandoned manor itself. A sense of dread coiled in Eleanor's stomach. She understood now. The manor held the answers. It had always held them. And entering it meant confronting everything her family had hidden for generations. The fog thickened around her, swallowing the path back. Eleanor's resolve hardened. She would face the darkness, the lies, and the spirits that lingered. She had no choice. But just as she stepped forward, a sudden, sharp sound tore through the silence. Footsteps, fast, deliberate, crunching through the wet grass. Not the boy. Someone else. Someone alive. And Eleanor knew immediately that she was not alone on the moor. Eleanor froze, her lantern quivering in her grasp as the footsteps drew closer. They were too heavy, too confident to belong to the boy. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to stay silent, blending into the shadows at the edge of the moor. A figure emerged from the fog. A man, tall and broad, with a coat soaked from the rain. His eyes glinted sharply beneath the brim of his hat. For a fleeting moment, Eleanor felt the same fear she had known as a child, standing before someone who could crush her without effort. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The man froze. Then, with a low chuckle, he stepped closer. "You shouldn't be here, Miss Harrow," he said, his tone smooth but dangerous. "This land is not safe for the curious." Eleanor's grip on the journal tightened. "I'm not leaving until I know the truth about Thomas," she said. "About my family." The man's smile faded, replaced by a scowl. "Curiosity can get one killed," he warned, but then paused, as if debating whether to reveal more. "Thomas Harrow was never meant to be found. The manor keeps its secrets, and some truths are buried for a reason." Eleanor took a deep breath. "I don't care why. I'm not afraid anymore." The man's eyes flickered with recognition, or was it fear? He stepped back, motioning toward the looming shape of Brackenford Manor barely visible through the fog. "If you go inside, you'll uncover things that could destroy your family forever." The boy appeared again beside Eleanor, his small figure almost ethereal in the mist. He looked toward the manor, then at her, eyes pleading. The silent insistence in his gaze left no room for hesitation. Eleanor knew she had to enter. With a deep, steadying breath, she stepped forward, passing the boy and ignoring the man's warning. The manor rose before her, massive and dark, its windows like unblinking eyes watching her every move. The front door loomed ahead, heavy and unyielding, but when she touched it, it swung open as if welcoming her, or daring her to enter. Inside, the air was cold, damp, and heavy with the weight of decades. Faded tapestries hung on cracked walls, and a thick layer of dust covered the furniture. Every step Eleanor took echoed through the cavernous hall, making her heart race with anticipation. At the top of the grand staircase, a faint light flickered from a room at the end of the corridor. Eleanor's pulse quickened. She moved closer, the journal clutched tightly against her chest, the boy following silently behind her. Then, she saw it, a portrait. Framed in dark wood, hung crookedly on the wall. A young boy in Victorian attire stared back at her. Pale hair, hollow eyes, the very image of the child on the moor. And beneath the portrait, a small brass plaque read, "Thomas Harrow, beloved and lost." Eleanor swallowed hard. She had found him. She had found the truth. But the whispering began again, faint at first, then louder, surrounding her. "Find me, save me, reveal me." The boy's voice, the echo of decades, was calling her to uncover the secret hidden deep within the manor. And Eleanor realized that the greatest danger, and the greatest revelation, still lay ahead. Lightning flashed through the cracked windows, illuminating a doorway at the far end of the hall, where shadows twisted unnaturally, and the air seemed to pulse with life of its own. Eleanor stepped toward it, heart hammering. She was no longer a visitor in the house of her ancestors. She was part of the story now, and every step would bring her closer to a truth that had waited far too long to be revealed. The manor waited silently, and so did Thomas. Eleanor stepped through the doorway at the end of the hall, her lantern casting long, trembling shadows across the stone walls. The air smelled of damp earth and something older, something that had been hidden for decades. The corridor led to a spiral staircase, narrow and steep, descending into darkness. The boy, Thomas, followed silently, his pale face illuminated faintly by the lantern. Every step felt heavier than the last, as though the house itself was resisting their intrusion. At the bottom, Eleanor found a heavy oak door, ancient and unadorned, but unmistakably sealed for a reason. Her fingers trembled as she pressed against the handle. A whisper, barely audible, floated through the darkness. "It is here, the truth awaits." She pushed, and the door creaked open, revealing a chamber lit by a single shaft of moonlight streaming through a small, high window. Dust motes danced in the silver glow. In the center of the room stood a wooden cradle, old but carefully preserved. Inside lay a collection of journals, letters, and delicate toys, Thomas's belongings. Eleanor knelt beside the cradle, opening the journals. One by one, the secrets spilled forth. The truth of the Harrow family's betrayal. The deliberate erasure of Thomas's existence. The schemes of those who had stolen his legacy to protect their own. And then she found it, a letter from her mother, sealed with trembling handwriting. Eleanor, if you find this, know that the child was innocent, and the house remembers. Only you can set him free. A sudden cold swept the chamber. Thomas's presence became more tangible, his small form glowing faintly, hovering near the cradle. His eyes locked onto Eleanor's, pleading, desperate. The chamber shuddered. Shadows stretched along the walls, twisting like living things. A voice, low and sinister, echoed through the room. You should not be here. Oliver stepped from the darkness, wet and furious, his eyes blazing. You dare uncover what I have kept hidden. Eleanor rose, clutching the journals. I am here for Thomas. You cannot stop the truth. Oliver laughed, sharp and cruel. The truth will destroy everything. Your family, your future, you. Lightning struck the manor roof, illuminating the scene in harsh white light. Eleanor felt a surge of resolve. She would not be intimidated. She raised her voice, firm and unwavering. I will not let you silence him any longer. His life, his story, belongs to him, and to everyone who seeks justice. Thomas's glow intensified, spreading through the chamber, and the shadows around Oliver wavered. The room shook, dust falling like rain. For a moment, everything was chaos, light and darkness clashing. Eleanor stepped forward, holding the journals high. You have no power here. Only truth remains. Oliver lunged, but the light from Thomas surged outward, pushing him back. A scream echoed as he stumbled into the shadows, swallowed by the darkness he had long controlled. The chamber grew silent, the shadows retreating. Thomas's form began to shimmer, his small face finally peaceful. He reached out toward Eleanor, and for the first time, his voice was clear. Thank you. Eleanor knelt, tears in her eyes, as the boy faded into a soft, radiant light that slowly disappeared, leaving the chamber bathed in calm moonlight. The house exhaled. For the first time in decades, Ravenscroft Manor felt free.